Got it. Hey, great news for you Michiganders. The Detroit pro football season, you know who I'm talking about, the opener right around the corner. The only sportsbook app that I ever recommend in Michigan, Play Gun Lake Sportsbook, an online casino app. They've got a great offer for new customers to kick off the upcoming pro football season. An amazing 50-1 odds boost. That's on your pick to win this year's Pro Football Championship, the big game. You know what I'm talking about. Play Gun Lake, they've got terms and conditions. All new users who sign up and make a deposit receive 50-1 super odds boost. Just pick your team and get odds boosted to 50-1. Restrictions apply from the Play Gun Lake Sportsbook app. Here are the top 6 faves to win the Pro Football Championship this coming season. Kansas City, San Francisco, Baltimore, Detroit, Cincinnati, Philadelphia. Download the Play Gun Lake Sportsbook app right now and get your 50-1 super odds boost. It's a limited time offer. It's for new customers only. PlayGunLake.com has terms and conditions. You got to be 21 and in Michigan. You play for fun. You love to win. You bet. PlayGunLake.com. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Time now for the Tuesday headlines from the Smerconish.com daily newsletter. Poll question today. Is Trump really trying to get out of debating Harris, or is he involved in some other type of gamesmanship? I've been talking about the fact that former President Trump reignited this doubt yesterday as to whether he would participate in the debate with Vice President Kamala Harris just 2 weeks away. Labor Day this weekend, Labor Day on Monday, the holiday, and then we've got the debate the following week. Today, we are 70 days out from the conclusion of the election. We went with the ABC story in the newsletter today, and what's Trump up to? Who the hell knows? It's hard to get in his head. Is he just trying to win the news cycle? I mean, he looks evasive and weak. When he's the one talking about the rules, I don't know. I don't want it to be ABC. Maybe he's setting the bar. Maybe he's just trying to set the bar low for himself. Like, well, they're going to be very rude to me and very unfair to me. And then all of a sudden, the night of the debate, it goes well for him, relatively speaking. And you say, oh, well, geez, he had a pretty good night. I mean, what's going on? Who the hell knows? It doesn't make sense because initially the microphones were muted to try and put guardrails on him. And now it's Vice President Harris who apparently doesn't want them muted, and it's Trump saying, well, I don't like them muted either, but then again, we agreed, so let's mute the microphones. None of it makes sense. Just make sure you're voting at Smerconish.com on today's poll question. Is he trying to get out of the debate? Or is there something else going on, some level of gamesmanship? Nice to be back in studio today. I was in Atlanta just for the day yesterday, and I am surrounded by the entire squad, sans TC, who is off this week. So I don't know if PJ is alert and awake, but PJ is with me. PJ from Creative Outfit, normally running the entire video show today, boosted by Aleco. Are you a little more alert?
Awake. Oh, yeah. Awake. Yesterday was a wake-up call. Definitely need to be 100% focused, ready to go.
You reminded me of my famous radio story, which is the one time that I dropped the F-bomb on terrestrial radio is when I was doing a pre-interview, taping it. TC was there with a guest. And because we were on tape, I said to the guy, hey, can I just tell you, you got to wake the F up. And Dan, they never cut that out and it aired. Nobody ever complained to the FCC, though.
Wow.
No, they didn't cut it out. TC didn't cut it out.
It's true.
It was TC.
Yeah, and it's true. And yes. They didn't want to fire her because of the obvious value that she supplies to me, but they put a letter, this is so corporate and so CBS. They put a letter in her file and it stayed there I think for a year. Like that was the punishment. Oof. And then it was removed from the file. So anyway, PJ is here. Dan is in D.C. Alice is in parts unknown. We are joined by the managing editor of all, and surrounded by like a whole new set. I don't know what's going on with what's behind Alice, but for the benefit of our...
This is my office. This is my Smerconish office, clearly.
Okay, but there are a lot of Easter eggs. Is that the proper... Yeah, look at everything that's going on in her in her work. Keep
Yeah,
calm.
you might
and
want to screenshot this one with the Wissahickon in the background.
Alice, if I were a shrink, I could spend like a week just analyzing what you have chosen to have behind you.
Yes, as long as you can see the poster from here, that's all that matters to me.
Hey, actually, gang, can I just tell you a quick story? Maybe not that interesting, but I'm so happy to be back in studio and to have slept in my own bed last night, because I had something happen in Atlanta. It all worked out, obviously, but I was delivering a speech in Atlanta yesterday to a large group, and they have a convention center that is adjacent to the airport. And I've spoken there before, and there's a monorail. What do they call it? SkyTrain. It's like a monorail that connects the convention center and a series of hotels to the airport. So in anticipation of my speech yesterday, I slept there the night before. I log on, I get my boarding pass for my flight home, and holy smokes, my flight has been moved up an hour since I bought the ticket.
Oh, no.
And I was never alerted to it because a travel agent had booked it and my email wasn't used. The travel agent's email was used. So they must have been alerted and never told me. And I'm looking and I'm like, there's no way I can make this flight, because now the margin between the end of my speech and the flight were so tight. So long story short, in a big corporate speech environment like this, there's an enormous like AV city, giant screens. It was more than 1,000 people. So it's like a big, it's a big show. And it was choreographed down to the second, where they said to me, you're going to speak we want you to speak for 45 minutes. I hit that mark. Dan would have been proud of me. You're going to do 15 minutes of Q&A, and you will finish at 2:30. And I said, okay. And at 2:30, I said, don't be offended, like a bat out of hell. I need to get out this door, get on the monorail, the SkyTrain, pull an O.J. Simpson, try and run through the Atlanta airport and make it to my flight. Because if I don't, I'd be there several more hours. Okay, 2:30 we conclude. I go out the door. I get to the monorail station. The door opens immediately. I get on the monorail. I get to the airport, which is like a 4 or 5 minute ride. And when I get to that airport, and Atlanta is, I think it's like the busiest airport in the country. I don't know. It's big and it's impressive. I sprint O.J. Simpson style through that airport, and I'm in a suit and tie, sweating profusely. When I get to TSA pre, they look at me and they see the panic in my face, and they're like, over here. And I go through the line quickly, and I now I have to get on another train. So SkyRail, then another train to take me to gate 25. Bottom line is, I've finished the speech at 2:30, and at 3:17, the airplane pushes back from the gate, and I'm on board. Woo! And here I am.
Pop culture references that we shouldn't make any more aside. That is very
never again.
Crazy, man. Yeah. It was crazy. And then I when I finally got back to Philly, I listened. I was so excited about the Michael Lewis interview yesterday. Michael Lewis, who wrote Moneyball, Michael Lewis, who wrote The Big Sort, Liar's Poker, and now with his Sam Bankman-Fried. Although, Dan, I have to talk to you privately because his audio needs to be boosted in the podcast. You know, I'm such an audiophile, and I was listening to the Book Club podcast, and I didn't like the audio level, so we'll catch up and talk about that later.
I would tend to disagree. You have a very, very keen ear, and as soon as I got your email at dark30 this morning, I had a quick listen on it, and his phone quality was maybe not the greatest. The volume level of your voice and his voice were actually correct.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. What I'm supposed to do, and it was his muffling which makes it appear quieter. I can show you what it looks like if you want me to, like in a waveform.
Go ahead.
Show that
Go
the
ahead.
levels are actually
do you have
the
it?
same. So I do. I have
roll
the
the
file
tape.
up here.
Okay.
Yeah, so
oh boy. What am I looking at?
Yeah. All right. So do you see this here? All right.
Yeah.
So this here is your
looks like
voice,
my heart rate.
Yep, and then this is his voice on the right. So if we play this,
and I found myself wondering,
so this
a
is
lot of money changed hands.
Oh.
How much good came from all that they were doing?
Okay.
Here is his response.
This is all right. So you're asking a slightly different question than I thought you were asking.
It sounds so much lighter, though.
It sounds lighter because listen to how poor, how muffled his phone is.
This is all right. So you're asking a slightly different question than I thought.
Yeah.
And your voice also has studio compression and processing on the microphone. But if you play it
and
here,
I found myself wondering,
the
a
levels,
lot of money
we want them
changed
right,
hands.
maybe just a little into the yellow here on the VU meter on the right. And he is just coming just up to it. And he's just
all right.
So, yep.
I love people being given the sausage making insight into. Hey, it's good for people to know how seriously we take what we do and we want to get it right. I loved that interview. I loved that interview. So, thank you, Dan. And by the way, being in Atlanta for a large private group. Speaking about the Mingle Project reminds me, Asheville, September 22nd. I think it's sold out. Maybe there are a couple of single tickets. And then I always forget to mention this, and I'm even wearing my special hat today, the Benjamin Harrison Presidential Site in Indianapolis. I will be there November 14 for their annual Presidential Speaker Series, and I will be delivering the Mingle presentation. So come see me in Indy. You can find that easily if you search it. By the way, did you all notice my new hat today? I'm wearing these headphones, so I'll take it off and show everybody on YouTube. It's from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
That's cool,
right?
Yeah.
Can Aleko? Can you show? Yeah. There it is. Isn't that cool? The folks at the Benjamin Harrison Presidential Site, they gave me like a whole welcome to Indy, kit, and this was included in it.
Nice.
So, all right.
That's some good swag.
Come see me in Indy. Come see me in Asheville. More dates to be announced soon. Okay, more headlines now from the Tuesday edition of the newsletter. I love this story, even though I don't like the law. Dateline Sydney, as in Australia, is your boss texting you on the weekend? Work email pinging long after you've left for home. Employees in Australia can now ignore those and other intrusions, don't get any ideas, Alice, into home life thanks to a new right to disconnect law designed to curb the creep of work emails and calls into personal lives. Alice, do you think we should have a law like this in the United States?
It wouldn't apply to us. That was like my first thing that I thought of in terms of, here's the thing. I have some thoughts about, our schedule and how often we have to communicate. And, sometimes it goes after traditional work hours, but I mean, nothing is traditional work hours in this specific role. But I think that's the nature of radio. That's the nature of news. We can't really disconnect completely for long periods of time without it kind of being a hindrance to my own workflow. I have gotten a lot better at ignoring you sometimes. So, there's that.
Well, look, my view is that if someone is intrusive and they are just over the top in your personal space, then the market ought to handle that and, go to a different place or tell whomever it is that's being too intrusive and deal with it. My beef is I don't like government saying, okay, you have a right not to respond to your boss's email. That's my beef. I mean, I'm not supportive of intrusive bosses, and I try not to be one. Another story today. This is unbelievable, guys. The lawyer in me wants to point this out, and I'll just give you an insight into how I got to it. I read a story yesterday talking about Canadian tariffs on Chinese EVs, and Tesla's included. So I went to the Toronto Star because I always like to get a local news outlet for a story that, you want to go to an outlet that's closest to the source. And when I got to the Toronto Star yesterday, my attention was diverted on a story that is in the newsletter today about the prosecution of a Toronto man for sexual assault where they don't know who the woman is. This is so rare. In other words, there's video of a sexual assault taking place, They know who did it because they identify the guy. They can't identify the woman. The woman never came forward, and nevertheless, and I'm totally for this, nevertheless, they were able to prosecute the guy and get a guilty plea. Read that story. Toronto man has been sentenced to 4 years in prison for sexually assaulting an unknown woman who has never come forward, but those terrifying attack outside the front door of an East End Toronto home was captured by surveillance video. That is a remarkable story. Check it out. There is a story from USA Today, actually from their X feed, that is, well, Alice, I don't know if I would have put it in here, but for you, you are a real 1%er. What am I talking about?
Ooh, this might be controversial depending on how I answer because I'm not actually a real 1% in this context. But it is, we are talking about redheads. We are talking about celebrating redheads coming together, how rare of a breed they are. So rare that I want to emulate them. So that's why I'm a natural blonde turned redhead. But I do want to say that it also took a lot of willpower for me not to put just a picture of myself in today's newsletter because I thought about that briefly.
So only 1 to 2% of the world's population have naturally red hair. You can read all about it in the newsletter today. There's a story from MLB.com. I think the reason that I put it in the newsletter is it's not only an interesting story, but I was just dying to write the headline. And the headline that I wrote is, he really did play for the other team. Like, you know the expression, he plays for the other team? I'm looking at blank stares from Alice and from PJ. Dan, you know the expression, like, oh yeah, he plays for the other team.
Yes.
Do you know what it means?
Where are you going?
Well, have you heard it?
Of course I have.
You have?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You're talking about that he's gay.
Yeah. Plays for the other. Yeah. Like PJ, you didn't know that?
Okay.
No.
You've never heard that?
No.
Not that there's anything wrong with it.
No.
Alice, have you ever heard that expression?
Yes, but I'm standing by being diminutive.
So
I don't know if that's PC anymore to say, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
So it's a story about a Major League Baseball player, and this has to do with a rain delay, and that's really the rub of the story, no pun intended. But he ended up playing for both the Red Sox and the Blue Jays in the same game because he was traded and there had been a rain delay. So when the game is resumed, he's now on the other squad, so he enters the record books having played for both teams in the same game. Or the headline
trading could happen that fast.
Or the headline that I wrote for Smerconish.com, he really did play for the other team. So
No, Alice, the original game that was rained out after the second inning was like months ago, and this was making it up. And in the last couple of months, he was traded.
Right.
And so therefore had to play for both teams because you have to play with the same roster in a suspended game as it was the original day that you played it.
Yeah, I shouldn't hint like, hey, it rained for 40 minutes and then they played the rest of the game. Dan is absolutely right. There was a significant, delay in this case. We have another sports story in the newsletter today. Jason Gay, who has been a guest on this program, sports columnist for the Wall Street Journal, and it's all about fantasy football, which I know like nothing about, and I loved his analysis, which begins this way. Howdy, friends. It's draft season for fantasy football, a grim hobby concocted by the calculator industry, a.k.a. Big Math, to suck all the pleasure out of watching the NFL. I'm terrible at playing fantasy and have never won a thing, but it's not going to stop me from offering unsolicited, lousy advice to my fellow sufferers. Please enjoy. And then here's one paragraph that sums it up. Fantasy football is an odd game in which participants draft fake teams of real NFL players, tabulate their weekly scoring to compete against other fake teams, briefly think they're smarter about football performance than most other NFL managers, go into an existential funk when their top player becomes allergic to the end zone, and wind up having to stand in the rain at a busy intersection, draped in a sandwich board reading, honk, I lost my fantasy league. It's a miserable time-sucking habit, and yet somehow I find it entertaining, as do millions and millions of people. So those are your headlines in part from the Tuesday edition of the newsletter. PJ, appreciate your alertness. Thank you for being with me today. Alice, as always, red hair or not, terrific job. Dan, great to see you. Please monitor those audio levels because my ear is always out there doing its own calculation. I appreciate all of you. And most importantly, those who are watching and listening, vote on today's poll question. What's Trump up to? Is he afraid to debate Vice President Harris, or is there some other gamesmanship in which he's involved? See ya.